Welcome to today's discussion, everyone. My name's Byron Webster, and I lead the sales for SABA Hospitality globally. And today we're talking all things mobile ordering, point of sale system, and it's actually one of my favorite topics because there are so many benefits to mobile ordering. Anything from increased revenue to decreased costs. You obviously can improve efficiency, but so many hotels underutilize their mobile ordering platforms, especially how they connect and relate to the existing systems on the property, like the point of sale system. And we're really lucky today to have Jay Sherman with us. Jay is an independent hospitality technology consultant based over in Munich. And Jay actually spent 20 years on the vendor side of things, including senior roles with Micros, which for those of you who don't know is Oracle's point of sale system. He also worked with Shiji, where he led pre-sales for Infosys across the European, Middle East, Asia, and Americas region. But these days he works on the operator side, helping multi-property hotels, F&B groups get the most out of their existing platforms. And he does that through his consulting agency, which is called Boldly International. Thank you, Jay, for being with us today. We really appreciate it. I know you've got a lot of expertise in the area, so we're very grateful that you're able to join us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Byron.
No, it's our pleasure. So maybe rather than jump straight into the guest-facing technology, which is obviously the digital ordering platforms, which is what we do, we'll take a step back and have a quick chat about the point of sale system, because when we're deploying our mobile ordering solutions into a hotel, we quite often get asked, can you integrate into our point of sale system? And this often leads operators to discover that their point of sale systems may not necessarily be set up for success, especially when it relates to mobile ordering. From your perspective, what's the gap that most operators don't realize they have with respect to their point of sale system today, which obviously also offers great opportunity moving forward once they plug those gaps?
Yeah, that's a great point, Byron. And the interesting thing is most operators are running just a fraction of what their POS can do. They don't even realize what they're using or what they're not using. And that's really the big challenge, is the configuration gap. A lot of times the system was set up years ago by someone who doesn't even work at the hotel anymore. They've inherited a system that they're holding together as best they can. They're making it work in any way possible. A lot of times that results in a mess, a data mess. And that becomes the challenge when they come to someone like you to say, I want to integrate to your more advanced solution. The old expression, garbage in, garbage out. If they come to you with a messy database, a messy system, and they want to integrate, they're going to get a messy guest experience in the mobile ordering and on the other side as well. And that really gets to be a big challenge with how they're using the system.
So when you say configuration gap, I'm assuming you're differentiating that from, for example, a feature gap. So when you say configuration gap, what would be a practical world example of a configuration deficiency that you see?
I think one example I was just talking about recently with someone was the fact that they were complaining that every time they were trying to order a sandwich, it was asking for a temperature. And this wasn't a burger or anything like this. This was a regular sandwich and it was asking for a temperature. And it was a simple mistake. Someone had said, oh, this cheeseburger prints to the right places in the kitchen. It's on the right part of the screen. I'm just going to copy and paste it and rename it Club Sandwich, and it works. The staff had just learned to say Club Sandwich rare or whatever they hit, and the kitchen ignored it. The system was functioning. It was doing what was needed to be done, but the reality was they weren't really using the system as best they can. And once you get into integration with third-party systems, suddenly now a guest doesn't understand that's just an old mess. They're going to go, wait, why is a Club Sandwich want a temperature? Is it not what I thought it was? I'm very confused. And it's just a bad guest experience.
Absolutely. And like you touched on there, when we're talking about configuration deficiencies, those deficiencies are obviously amplified when you connect up to a digital ordering platform, because obviously traditional ordering is largely controlled by a human. I walk up, I place my order, it gets punched into the POS manually, and therefore you can make any adjustments necessary. But when we're talking about hooking up to a third-party digital ordering platform, those deficiencies have got to be accounted for in the configuration. What happens to an order, for example, in a human, you can just dictate exactly where that order goes. Whereas with a digital ordering platform, is it held as an open order in the POS? Does it shoot directly through to the bar and the kitchen, or does it close off if the order's being paid for? So all those things have got to be accounted for, obviously, in the configuration, because if they're not, it can impact largely on the hotel operations, and it actually might lead the hotel to incorrectly think that they have the wrong POS, whereas that's not necessarily the case at all. It just might not be configured correctly.
Oh, absolutely. It's not about having the right point of sale, the right mobile ordering. You can have absolutely the best mobile ordering solution on the planet, and you can have the absolute best point of sale solution on the planet. And if you're not using them working well together, it's not going to be a good solution. I was just watching a video this morning talking about F1 racing, and those are some of the most amazing cars on the road. But if you take someone who doesn't know how to drive, or you take a NASCAR driver from the United States, it's not going to work well. And it doesn't matter that they're an award-winning stock car driver. They're driving in a car they don't understand. And as you said, things can really go wrong when you're trying to mix and match two systems that they're not designed to work together, but that they're not built to work well together. You're not using them to their fullest capability.
Yeah. We might leave the Formula One talk to the side, because being an Australian, Oscar Piastri is not necessarily going that well this season. So
It's a bit of a touchy subject at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly is. So let's quickly move on. And we might actually jump into the mobile ordering side of things now. So when a hotel makes the decision to implement a mobile ordering platform, what actually happens within a hotel when they're looking at adding this tech to their overall technology stack?
That's interesting, because there's two ways to look at it: what ideally should happen and what often happens. Ideally, there's going to be a logical thought process to it as to how they can handle it, how it's going to improve the guest experience and their overall operations. Unfortunately, what often happens is someone sees it at a different hotel or experiences it at a restaurant or something and says, "Ooh, we should get that." And then IT or someone runs out, finds a system, throws it in, and there's never that real full thought, because there's so many parts of making full use of the mobile ordering system. It's not just turn it on and make it work. You actually need to make sure the POS and the ordering system are talking to each other, working well. Like you said before, it goes into that idea of, does it get held? Does it get sent? Does it get closed? All of those parts of it. But then I often see sometimes where the marketing side of it, the human aspect of it, completely falls apart as well. Because what you ask, what happens in a hotel when they decide to add the mobile ordering, maybe they don't talk to all of the departments, and marketing isn't getting any information out to the guests. And so they complain. They say, they may come to you and say, "We bought your system and we're not seeing any increase in sales." And you go in and you look and you go, "Does anyone even know you have mobile ordering? I don't see." And how does a guest know to order this way? And so you need all of the departments working together. And that is something I talk about as well, is having a workshop and inviting all the right people. The same thing happens with mobile ordering. You need to make sure marketing is involved, food and beverage, even facilities. Where is the guest going to pick up the order, or how is it going to be delivered to them? Accounting, finance, all of those teams are an important part.
And ironically, we often find that the platform owners, which most of the time are the F&B team, because they're who gets impacted most operationally, they're often not involved in the initial discussions or the selection process at all. It's a mandate that comes from IT, from procurement. So as you say, someone might have seen a platform in another hotel and said, "That's great, we're tasking IT to go out there and find us a platform," without actually having those discussions with the operational on-the-ground team to work out what their needs are, and therefore what platform is going to suit them best.
Yeah, I've been involved in projects where on the first day with mobile ordering, they hadn't even discussed with operations about what plateware they would use. And suddenly they want them delivering it to a pool, and all they have are actual glassware. And you've now got the pool team saying you can't bring the glasses out there, and food and beverage saying it's all we have. And marketing is saying, "Why aren't you using this? What's going wrong?" You got to have the right people involved.
Absolutely. And what about the integration conversation? Because what we find, and the way that we usually present this, is we've got a standalone platform. So we can accommodate an integration, we can accommodate standalone. And that decision generally, the way that we describe it, will come down to volume. If you're a smaller operator who's simply rolling out a mobile ordering platform for in-room dining, you might be getting 5 orders a day, 10 orders a day, 20 orders a day. It might not necessarily make sense to integrate into the point of sale system, as opposed to, for example, a larger hotel, busy pool deck. You might be getting 2, 3, 4, 500 orders in a short period of time. And in that sense, the integration becomes critical, because without it, those parallel systems might actually break.
Yeah. I think you bring up two interesting points. One, having the non-integrated solution is fantastic for those small operations that don't necessarily need that. They're doing some basic solutions. It works well for them. And that's a great entry point. But as you said, as you get bigger operations, you need that full integration both ways. One, you want to be able to put the information into one system and it's going to flow over to the other system, because there's nothing worse than a guest sitting there going, so the menu says this cheeseburger is going to be $8.50, but if I order it on my digital phone, I can get it for $13.25. I don't understand. What's the difference? You need that consistency between the two systems. But also, you talked about getting, I don't remember the numbers you used, but a lot of orders coming from a pool deck or something like that. One area where things often fall apart is people forget that there are built-in flow regulators in that guest experience and that operations. So it's great if you can add a whole bunch of orders, but your kitchen may not be able to handle it. Your wait staff may not be able to handle it. Right now, in a traditional environment, you walk in, you sit down, and you only have 8 waiters that are working in that restaurant with 4 point of sale terminals. That means the kitchen can only get 4 orders at a time at most. Even though you have 8 waiters and 25 tables, it all just filters its way down to that one choke point. If you now sit there and say, I'm going to give all 25 tables the ability to order themselves, isn't this wonderful? Great. You've just now hit your kitchen with 25 orders that used to only be able to get 4 all at once. So that tends to be a real issue with the integration, is thinking about that process of the overall flow and how it works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what we're talking about integrations, or we're talking about those different areas which might cause difficulty, which hadn't necessarily been considered. I mean, this is something that comes up in our sales calls all the time. Like, what can fail when we're talking about an integration? Where can it fail? What happens if the property's internet goes down? And we always joke around and say, listen, most of your systems are going to be cloud-based. If the internet goes down, you guys have got bigger issues than if someone can place an order via their mobile phone, and they can still walk up to the bar, they can still pick up their in-room phone and place an order if they want to. But that's just us joking around. But in all seriousness, you mentioned that volume of orders coming through with an integration. Where else can the mobile ordering integration with the POS go sideways, so to speak?
Overwhelming the kitchen is the obvious big one. You talked as well about any kind of network failure, the integration, if the integration goes down. And I think it's also important to always be thinking about the guest experience. The guest is going to have a much better experience if the system were to say, our mobile ordering is currently offline. Please talk to a staff member to order, as opposed to, I've seen some systems where guests very happily order, and then nothing goes to the kitchen because the integration is down, but the guest has no visibility. The staff have no idea it was ordered, and the guests have no visibility. And that just leads to a real, that is a worse experience than trying to flag down a waiter because you think your food's coming and it isn't. So I think the integration, you talk about that network connection, and you're right, everything now is cloud-based. So if the network goes down, you have bigger problems. But I do think that guest experience is contingent on the communication and the guest knowing that they can't order. It's a lot better of an experience than thinking you ordered.
Yeah. And there's definitely ways to have a backup to a failed integration. So I know that there are definitely platforms out there that, because they're not standalone platforms, they're just the front-facing side of digital ordering. If the order, or if the integration fails, I should say, that order just does go to nowhere. Then there are those platforms, I like to say that ours is one of them, where even if the integration fails, because we've got our own back end, the order still flows back into our SABA hospitality dashboard and then starts alerting the hotel staff to say, hey, there's an order sitting there. It hasn't integrated into the point of sale system, but you just need to put it in manually. So there are definitely systems that can account for that. Other little things that we see, and this is one that came up really early in our integration journey, was something as simple as taxes and service charge logic, because there are certainly regions in the world where we're talking about a tax. You might have a 10% flat tax on the end of the item value, whereas there's other regions where the tax on food might be different to the tax on an alcoholic beverage versus the tax on a non-alcoholic beverage. And so that logic has got to be accounted for. Otherwise, you're obviously going to get the wrong total at the end, and that can cause all sorts of issues within a hotel if every order that comes through has the incorrect taxation policy attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other point you brought up, you talked about that failover if the system doesn't go through or anything like that. Training the staff. I'd mentioned before about marketing, communicating to the guest and how important it is you're training the guest to use it, but training the staff. They take the time to buy your solution because it has that fail over the dashboard, that communication. But if your staff members don't actually read the notifications or understand what it's saying, then it doesn't, that goes back to having a fantastic system. But if you don't use it properly, you're not getting the benefit out of it.
And in the staff's defense, you don't know what you don't know. And that comes back to that initial training, right? So if we keep moving forward and say the hotel has made the decision to integrate mobile ordering into their operations, and I think you may have touched on this one in our initial question, but obviously you want the technology to be successful. That's obvious. But so many hotels, like you mentioned, they might just see a system operating successfully in their neighbor property and think, oh, that's a great idea. We're just going to pop that into our property, rather than really thinking about it as a part of a more integrated guest experience. So from your perspective, what is the difference between that bolt-on technology and a piece of technology that really does enhance the overall guest journey?
Yeah, a lot of that, I think, really comes down to the mindset and the understanding of what the guest experience is. And what I mean by that is simply adding mobile ordering because it is an option, because it is technology. If it doesn't fit your restaurant experience, your guest experience, that's not going to work, because the bolt-on solution is going to get it live. It's going to be fast. It's going to be put in there, but it needs to blend seamlessly into the overall guest experience. And so I guess what I would say, the biggest predictor of the successful deployment of what it's going to work is who on the property is owning it, who's responsible for it, and what they're going to be doing with it. So if it's a bolt-on that they've simply just said, look, we're putting this in and now check, we have mobile ordering as a solution, it's not going to really enhance the guest experience. It's not going to see a lot of success in that way.
And you can get, from what we see, if we feel like a hotel is viewing the technology more as a bolt-on, yes, you can get it up quickly, but the value is never going to materialize, like you mentioned. So we try and encourage hotels to step back a little bit and really think about the process, from how a guest understands or how the guest learns that this technology even exists, to the configuration of the menus. Like, does the menu make sense for a mobile ordering solution? It's not just simply a matter of transferring a paper-based menu over into a mobile ordering solution. So there's so many different things to consider when we're talking about the guest experience versus just another piece of technology. So that's how we see it anyway. But I guess one of the issues is there's so many different ordering solutions out there. Let's face it, the choice is that there's hundreds of them. So we like to try and think about the options in two different baskets in many ways. So you've got your native POS modules. And by the native POS modules, what I mean is that the point of sale system providers have their own mobile ordering solutions, and it's a module within their overall technology stack. And then there's the specialist solutions, and that's where I would put for example, SABA hospitality
Mhm.
solutions, a specialist solution where we're not a POS provider, where we really focus on the guest facing side of things and the guest experience. So if you're a hotel and you're trying to make a decision between these two buckets, what questions should you ask as an operator to make sure that you're getting the correct solution for your property?
Yeah, that's a really good thing to think about and to go in with that right mindset. And I think one of the very first questions is going to be, what is the anticipated, the expected order volume? What kind of flow are they expecting to see come through this? Because as you mentioned, a lot of point of sale systems do offer a mobile ordering solution of some kind, even if it's just a QR code to a basic web page, something like that. But that works well at a low volume. But where the specialized solutions really make the difference is that higher volume, because it's more than simply tossing an order into a point of sale. It's everything else that you've talked about throughout this, such as throttling the orders, holding orders, all of those kind of things makes a big difference. Now, cost is going to be a factor. Things are going to be something they need to consider. Oftentimes, with an integration cost, there are going to be additional charges, and it's not just what's that cost at go live, but what is the additional cost throughout? And that becomes the question throughout the lifetime of using this solution. Where is that balance? Now, the reason the specialists are in the industry is because they can show that return on investment. When you start having that higher volume, you don't mind paying for a solution that's going to provide real value. And then, as well, the customer experience. That's the other thing that they need to look at, because I've seen way too often where people get a guest, again, in the traditional point of sale solution. I talked before about throttling the orders, and it all went through the wait staff, went to the point of sale system. Again, in the traditional point of sale system, it didn't matter if you had the exact same point of sale system as your biggest rival across the street or down the road, because only your staff saw it. The guests weren't viewing that you're using Micros and so is your competitor, or you're using Infosys or Toast. The specialist solution is going to be the kind of system that's going to let your mobile ordering look like your brand, look like your experience, and not look generic, not look basic, because that guest experience makes a huge difference on what they're going to see when they're using the system. And that is a big factor to consider as well. Can you tailor it? Can you make it look like your own? Because if it's going to have the exact same generic user interface and experience as the next three restaurants, people pick up on that. And I don't think anyone's going to walk out of a restaurant or not go because it's a generic user interface, but it's one of those things that kind of just sticks in the back of your brain and just eats away at it. You don't walk out of the restaurant, but you just go, that just feels wrong. It doesn't flow nicely.
Yeah. And I think the other consideration is, and you mentioned guest experience there. So who actually owns the customer experience if something goes wrong? When you've got three different parties involved, the POS vendor, the specialist vendor, the operator, who's actually responsible for that customer experience if the system breaks, so to speak? And I know that when we're having those discussions, we try and take a lot of that on ourselves, because as a specialist vendor, we've had a lot to do with the bigger POS providers. So we actually understand their systems pretty well. And we also understand there can be a time lag between a support ticket getting lodged and a ticket getting answered with those larger companies. So we don't want that 2-week, 3-week time lag where the customer experience is getting impacted significantly. So we try and take that on ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important point to specify in the discovery journey, if your vendor is actually willing to take on that responsibility when they can.
And I think you bring up a great point, but one point that I would make that sometimes gets lost in hospitality, especially working with technology vendors, ultimately, who owns that responsibility for the customer experience if something breaks? It's the manager on the floor. It's that person standing in front of the guest.
That's right.
They're the ones who are facing the guest, dealing with the guest. And that's where, as you said, being a partner who's willing to get involved makes all the difference. That's really the important thing, because it can say we integrate with all these solutions, but when the system fails late on a Friday night, they are going to want somebody to pick up the phone and to help them as much as possible. And it sounds like you were talking about understanding that integration with the vendors and knowing, like you said, it's great. You logged a ticket. It's not a priority because the system is still up and running. Isn't that great? But for that manager's on the phone trying to fix a guest problem. They want someone who's going to be there to help them, someone who has the experience and who's going to maybe not overstep their bounds, but do what's necessary to get it done as much as possible, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, we couldn't agree more. And so just on that, we're talking about, and I was having this discussion with someone, that was last week before, can't recall, but we were just about to launch our mobile ordering system into a new property. And we're talking about what does a successful go live look like when we're discussing mobile ordering, and what does a failed go live look like? Because quite often properties see a successful go live, through the lens of, oh, great, we're receiving orders, we're receiving tickets, great, that's a successful go live. Whereas I would say that is more of a successful activation, whereas a successful go live is more about the concept of embedding the technology into the hotel's operating psychology and becoming a part of the existing systems, rather than just simply guest places order, goes to the kitchen, we deliver order. But what about from your perspective? What does a successful and a failed go live look like?
Yeah, you're right that there's different steps to it. The successful activation, that's a great way to put it, because yes, did orders go to the kitchen? Yes, they did. But there's more to go live than that. And that's where I think it's also important is going to be the fact that the system is going to work. I think a successful go live is a system that's working in a way that seems like it's just a natural fit, like it was supposed to be there. It's not a successful go live isn't necessarily everyone is using mobile ordering, because that's not what you want it to be. It needs to be tied in with the rest of your operations. It needs to be just that natural extension. The staff shouldn't be reminded of the system and having to be told, use this, or push the guests to use this. We're living in a time right now where the guests in hospitality range from retired baby boomers who aren't as comfortable with technology, all the way to first job, first time out of university people who live and breathe technology. And they're all going to be sitting in the same restaurant, the same hotel with that same experience. So forcing that down everybody's throat to order on their phone is going to completely exclude one side, but not having it excludes the other. So I think a successful go live is a system where it just feels like it's always been there and it's just a natural part of it. It's easy for the people who are comfortable, just walk in, they pick it up, they do the ordering themselves. And the people who aren't comfortable still have the option, still have that guest experience to not use mobile ordering. Now, long-term success is where you start looking at ROI and the benefits and the guest satisfaction scores and all of that. But that first go live, it needs to feel like the system's always been there and it's just natural.
And I guess that when that is the case, you do avoid that all too common situation where there's a lot of hype, a lot of push, a lot of training regarding the launch of the system. But after that, no one really owns it. And so 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, the hotel's back to using their paper menus because they haven't maintained that. They haven't maintained the systems that should have been put in place for the go live. Instead of just focusing on that, we're going to put a bunch of posters up. We're going to make sure our staff mention it week one, but they gets forgotten about after that.
Yeah, you took the flip side. You were asking me about a successful go live, but you're right. The opposite side of that is something that's been pushed down their throats, is forced in, and then just fails and falls off the cliff as it moves on, that ongoing maintaining of it.
And I guess, what about for those properties? They might have been up and running with mobile ordering for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, even 24 months, but they're not necessarily getting the results they expected. And that can be, as we know, many reasons why that could be the case. It could be awareness. It might be configuration issues, not using upselling, cross-selling to drive average check value. But where do you start when you're making those evaluations on why something isn't necessarily working as expected?
Yeah, I think one important part of that is to ask, what were the results that they were expecting? A lot of times the conversations people have about misaligned expectations has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with what their expectations are. If you are a hotel that averages 100 covers a night, And you're at the end of the year going, why has this mobile ordering not gotten us up to 300-400 mobile covers? And you're like, but you're a 200 guest hotel. How are you going to get that many mobile orders? You need to rethink what you're expecting. And that tends to be, it's not the technology, it's not that, it's their expectations. Beyond that, I think it's also just it's then moving into the operations. Is the menu structured for the digital solution? Are guests able to find the menu or find their way around? Because even if you're promoting, if that guest experience, and this is oftentimes where it needs to take the time to say, step back and use it from someone else's perspective. Maybe have an outside person. I don't even need to be an outside consultant. Take it to your friend, your neighbor, your parents, and ask them, how does this work? Because if you're an F&B operator who's using a point of sale or working in that restaurant, it just makes sense. You click through it. But to a guest, the fact that you put sandwiches in the same place that you put starters may not make sense to a guest. And so now for a guest, it's like they can't find what they want, or that's too hard to see on their phone because there's too many words. All of those kind of experiences can be a real issue as well. So it starts to become the question of, have you built it the right way? You look through it. It's like an author proofreading their own manuscript. They read right over the mistakes. Have they looked at that? And does it fit with the overall experience for that property? I always think back to working with a very high-end hotel group and talking to them about not mobile ordering for guest mobile ordering, but staff mobile ordering, a handheld device. And I was talking about, you need to use this and everything. And I was telling the IT person, you really should use it. It's great. As you're ordering, it's going to the kitchen. He said, stop. I've already tried talking to the owner of the hotel group, and I already tried. He's not interested. Why wouldn't he be interested? You can speed up service. You can do everything like that. It's wonderful. He goes, no, he had me go through the process and show him how it works. So this IT guy stood in front of the owner of the hotel, sitting at the table, and he shows the process. He's tapping away on the device. Everything's great. And he stops. He goes, and now the order's already in the kitchen. I can go to the next table. He goes, stop. When did you look at me when taking that order? And the guy says, no, I was ordering. He goes, that's not our service. I don't care if it takes an extra 5 or 10 minutes to get the food out. You actually have to look at me. And that's why throwing guest self-ordering into a high-end 5-star restaurant may not be the right fit. And it may be alienating guests, pushing them away with that. So you have to find where it fits.
Yeah, 100%. And we work with a lot of hotels where they roll out mobile ordering for in-room dining, poolside dining, beachside dining, and maybe some of the lower level restaurants. But for the 5-star restaurants, they're signature restaurants where it's not even about the food. It's about the experience. Yes, the food is a part of the experience, but the experience is everything from the service to the atmosphere. And they tend not to put it into those particular outlets because it doesn't fit with what they're trying to achieve with that particular brand or that particular part of the property. So I think that's a sensational point. And then there's those secondary considerations as well. Something like bad Wi-Fi, slow Wi-Fi, where someone opens a digital ordering menu and you get screen creep. That's a bad guest experience. Or maybe the QR codes around the pool could be faded and not working. I would imagine there's so many considerations when we're trying to work out why you're not getting the results that you expect. Because quite frankly, the technology could be perfect. It might be something else. On the flip side of that, maybe the operational side of it is perfect, and it is the technology that you selected that's not working. So all those things need to be considered, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a great point as well.
So basically, the takeaway message there is you really just need to look at that overall guest journey globally if you want to understand what is not working. So I think you need someone else to come and look at that. And you almost can't be in it because when you're in it, it's hard to see the trees from the forest.
And yeah, as you said, even having someone else, you can't make assumptions. So often it's so easy to sit there because it could be something as simple as you're standing there going, why isn't this working? And you're ordering, but your phone is on the built-in hotel Wi-Fi for staff members that's really good. Meanwhile, the guests is very patchy there or something. Like I said, bringing someone else in, having that outside perspective, maybe even something as simple as clearing the cache on your mobile browser and going, wow, now it takes really long time to load. You're absolutely right. Those are the things, and getting that view.
Fantastic. So I'm a little bit aware of time, Jay. I know you're super busy, so maybe we'll just have one last one. And I'm asking you this more for my own interest than anything, because this actually came up in one of my sales calls recently. And that was, what is one thing about a point of sale system and digital ordering that operators consistently get wrong? And the way that I answered this is that too often we see mobile ordering as a set and forget. Implement, forget about it. And a lot of operators are still in that mindset of paper menus and paper menu cycles where, okay, we're going to update our menus every 6 months, summer menu, winter menu, and therefore they don't really utilize and leverage the real benefits of mobile ordering, which is the capacity to make changes based on customer demand really quickly, really cheaply, and respond to the guest needs. And that's how I answered. That's how I viewed it. But what is the one thing about a point of sale system or digital ordering that operators are getting wrong consistently?
I think what you said about set and forget is a great point. People often look at point of sale, digital ordering, all of this, they look at it as a project, and that's a solution that they get through. But it's not a single project. It really needs to be looked at as an ongoing operating system, as a car you maintain, as something it requires that ongoing maintenance. Because so often people sit there and they slug through the project to get the system live. They get through go live. They celebrate, isn't this wonderful? And then a few days and months later, nobody's thinking about it. And next thing you know, it's 5 years later, the system is completely drifted from the way it actually runs. And also the idea of set it and forget it. And I'm sure this is even something you may sell as a benefit, is if the two systems are integrated and you can just make sure that the mobile ordering is inheriting exactly what it needs to from the POS, isn't that great? It goes back to that idea of taking a step back and looking at it, because they are looking at it going, okay, the point of sale has the new menu items, it has this, it has that. And they don't realize how that's affecting that guest experience as they go through that journey. Yep. Looking at everything for that first year, the implementation and ongoing training and support as well. Implementation, you have a team that's there. We talked earlier in this about getting notifications about, oh, there's an order that's failed or something like that. Ideally, they're not going to get that notification and they're not going to get that alert because everything is going to work great. The issue happens is now they finally get that notification 8 months later. They don't remember what they're supposed to do or how to handle it or where to get that notification. It's something that you need to maintain and nurture and keep going throughout the process. Obviously, it's a fine line. As vendors, we would often want to sit there and say, hey, buy our system. It solves your problems. You don't have to think about it. And that's great because they can focus on guest experience. They can focus on food, but you do still need to think about it. Maybe it's not top of mind, most important thing, but it can't be just shoved in a corner and forgotten about. I think that tends to be the challenge.
I think it's about optimizing it. There are so many different strategies you can use. And when you're transferring over to the mobile ordering solutions, you might not necessarily get on the best strategy for your property straight away. It's about trying different things. And when you try different things and you look at the data and you learn about how your guests are actually using your platform in reality, you can then respond. And that's when you're going to get the real benefits. That's when you're going to get the real uplift in revenue, the guest satisfaction, the efficiencies, because everyone's engaged in mobile ordering. So you don't have 80% of people maybe connecting to the platform, but they're not engaged with it. So they end up calling the phone anyway. So I just think that it needs to be viewed as a part of the furniture, so to speak, needs to be maintained, just like the guest experience needs to maintain. And when you do, that's when you're going to get the optimal results.
And I think, your optimization is a great point as well. Going back to that idea of looking at it as more than just a project, it's going to be an ongoing thing, and learning from the guests, talking to the guests, understanding it. There's no harm in coming back in 6, 8 months, a year, 2 years in redoing the mobile ordering or the point of sale, learning what you've learned, using what you've learned from it, talking to people to find out how to take advantage of it. In the very beginning, you asked, what do people not know about their systems? A lot of times they don't even know what they don't know. They buy a system, based on sales. They go through the sales process. This is a fantastic system. They get through implementation. They don't think about it again. They need to stop, evaluate what you have, review, and see how you can improve it. What have you learned since then?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially technology moves really quickly as well. So there's usually features and different opportunities getting added to technology stacks all the time. And we always encourage people to review what we're releasing. A lot of it isn't necessarily relevant to some properties, but some of it is, and it can really impact on the guest experience. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I think we've covered a fair bit of ground today, Jay. As I said, I'm a little bit aware of the time because I know how
Yeah.
busy you are, but I think there's something in there for everyone. I think there's a lot of great information, a lot of things that, not only our existing clients, but anyone who's involved in mobile ordering or thinking about implementing mobile ordering into their properties. I think there's a lot of great information in there. So anyone who's out there who is wanting to engage in mobile ordering, they're not happy with the results they're getting, absolutely get in touch with Jay. Website is boldlyinternational.com. Huge amount of experience, obviously being from the vendor side of things as well, is able to assess things from many different angles, which is incredibly useful. If you're looking to implement a mobile ordering platform and you're going through the vendor selection process, obviously we at SABA Hospitality would love the opportunity to chat to you as well. Our website, sabahospitality.com. We won't go any further than that. But for today, maybe we'll leave it there. Jay, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the chat today.
Absolutely. I as well. Thanks.